Hello friends and gamers, and welcome to Fortress. My name is Jinx, and today we're looking at the campaign medals for France for the Global War 1936 version 3 for the Tournament of the Spring Offensive. So if you don't know, the campaign medals are a series of 3 military ribbons attached to your chest at the end of each tournament to kind of symbolize that you came, that you had fun, and that you attended and played a game, right? And it's a way of kind of keeping track who played what over the years. It's your reputation, it's your campaign. You came and you know, you made efforts, and it should be recognized, the efforts that you made into this, right? So the 3 ribbons attached are the campaign ribbon, which will be unique for each tournament. It'll have a different design and different one. This one here is the World War II medal ribbon for, World War II medal for USA. It'll have a number attachment that will count the annual tournaments, starting at 1 and going up from there. The prestige ribbons are kind of a way of describing like an in-house victory point type way of doing it, but we're calling them prestige stars, a way of showing your accomplishments within the game. And showing how well you played that way, kind of recognizing not only that you came and that you attended and what nation you played and if your side won or not, but also how well you did within that game. Because third place isn't always just simply third place. Sometimes third place is like a really, really good third place where you were doing fantastically well and at the last second something just went haywire and just missed out on something, and maybe somebody captured your capital and boom, game over, right? Or something along those lines. So sometimes you can play a fantastic game and get third place. And this is one way of recognizing that. And if you come to a tournament, it's not just, you don't just get gold, silver, or bronze. You're also getting recognition for what you did in the field, what stars you achieved in the field, what accomplishments you gained. And I think that's quite cool. I think that's a way of really recognizing people's accomplishments. So 1 star is usually attainable by everybody, unless you're not even trying, right? 2 stars is a job well done. 3 stars is exceptional work, and 4 stars is a rare and outstanding achievement. The way I'm trying to design this is that it's very rare for somebody to get 4 stars. 1 out of a table of 6 will get 4 stars. Most of them will get 2s and 3s. You know, the winning side is usually a couple 3s, the losing side a couple 2s. Maybe one person, if they've just been completely unlucky all game, might get a 1. And sometimes too, if you get your 3 stars, you know, you get your tier 3 star and your tier 1 star, but you missed out on your tier 2 star, well, that still leaves you 2 stars, right? So sometimes it does happen that you get your tier 1 star just because you missed out on something else. The national ribbon shows which nation you played by the recipient. So in this case, this is a French national ribbon, and it'll have a gold or silver star attachment if you won 1st or 2nd place. And, you know, you'll also have an oak leaf attachment to symbolize how many major powers are played. If you showed up, because it should also be recognized that sometimes if you play the entire alliance, that's a lot more difficult than just showing up and playing, you know, just Italy or whatever, right? Sometimes you can get 3 stars as Italy, but if you show up and are playing, you know, Great Britain, France, USA, and the KMT, and you're competing against, you know, 3 other players, or 4 other players for that matter, you know, 1 Commonwealth and 3 Axis, that's tough. If your other 2 teammates called in sick, perhaps, or something like that, right? So it's a way of symbolizing, recognizing your accomplishments within the game. I want to thank all my feedback that I've gotten from my followers, from my friends, and well, I consider them essentially my lieutenants at this point. There's Adolf, Madman Dan, Liam Biarowski, and Trig. You know, all these guys I really look forward to seeing your guys' names out there when you comment, and not just in these videos, but in general. You know, you guys are fantastic, and I'm really appreciative of what you have to offer, right, to the board gaming community at large. So thank you very much. Let's get diving into this because I want to make a few more videos tonight still. So there's 3 options to get tier 1, a star in tier 1. 3 options to get a star in tier 2, etc., etc. So you don't have to try to get all 3 in tier 1. You just have to get one of them, and sometimes it's impossible to get all 3. And so we'll get into that now. So in tier 1, you have 3 options. The first one is the International Brigades. Now, I should quickly state before I get into this that these were originally designed by Panzer King, but I honestly really didn't like, I felt like it didn't match the speed and the tempo and kind of the flavor that the other ones had. And you could it was really like in your face that they were different, that they felt really different. So I took the liberty of basically redesigning. I think I only kept 1 out of his, and so out of 9, 1 out of his existed. And it was still a really good ideas that he came up with. It just didn't match the rest of the flavor of the game. Like, as you see in a lot of these other campaign medals, they all interact with each other on some level, where one player, let's say the Soviets are to hold Stalingrad, and the Germans have one to grab Stalingrad. The USA has one to grab Rome, and the British also have one to grab Rome. That kind of thing. They interact and work with each other kind of fairly smoothly in this big thing. And I felt like because Panzer King, he wasn't present for all the other ones so much and isn't really aware of what's going on with the other ones, so he had a bit of a disadvantage. So I took what his work he had and rewrote it all because, yeah, just to match everything else nicely. So, Brigadas Internacionales. I think that sounds, yeah, that one is Spanish. That's Spanish pronounced. It's not French. International gains. Gain a prestige star if at any point during the game France has lend-leased one unit of any type to Republican Spain. Do you know that France lend-leased more volunteers from France showed up in Republican Spain than did from Russia? Now, Russia sent them all kinds of equipment, but they didn't send them any men, or no volunteers from Russia came. But France, well, a lot of volunteers came from France. And so I thought that should be recognized in the game. It was a major thing that occurred during France. And even then, it wasn't huge amounts of volunteers coming in from France, but it was a good chunk. Specifically, people from there used to be, I think after World War I, there was something called the Commune of Paris. And so a lot of veterans of the Commune of Paris, where the barricades went up in Paris again, and they tried to establish a commune, went to go fight in Republican Spain. So that's the idea there. Oh yeah, and I thought it should be recognized. One unit is not too hard to do, right? Next up, we have Prolonger la Linga. I'm not going to try pronouncing anymore. Extend the line. Gain a prestige star if at any point in the game France builds a fortification on any border in French home country. I didn't want to limit it to, say, the Belgian border. Maybe I should have, but I have it this way. Let me know your thoughts. Should I say on the Belgian border? I know you can't build it at the start of the game, if Belgium is neutral. So it would really tie the hands of a player, and then once Belgium is no longer neutral, then you either capture it or it's in enemy hands, and you're in big trouble too. So I don't know if, anyways, this one here. Any fortification in the French home country. Appeal of June 18th. Gain a prestige star if, at any point after the surrender of France, Free France controls more land zones and collects more income than Vichy France. This one's the one that Panzer King came up with. So I just tweaked it a little bit, added more income than Vichy France, and that's where we sit now. Now we move on to Tier 2 stuff. First off, we have this crazy script here from the Abyssinians, where they're dealing with the Italian invasion. Gain a prestige star if, at any point during the game, Abyssinia wins the Second Italo-Abyssinian War. Abyssinia must capture Italian Eritrea. This is really hard to do. It's almost a Tier 3 in itself. But doable. It's doable because you can kind of make deals and strike deals, and hopefully the Russians assist you and that kind of thing. If you dutifully sent 2 units there each turn, one from France and one from Russia, you could have it done. But you'd have to do some arm twisting for the Russians to get them to help with this. But it's doable, right? That means that on turn 1, end of turn 1, you'd have 2 militia and you'd have 2 infantry at the end of turn 1. And that's in the mountains, against whatever the Italians have to throw at you. It's doable to win that war. It just would take you a lot of resources and a lot of time. It's not always advisable to do so, but it's up there. The Oath of Kufra. I haven't been showing anything on the map yet, so let's show some stuff on the map. Now, let's see. So the extend the line is simply build it anywhere in French home country. So a good place sometimes is in Paris, because then you have a river crossing here, but plus you have also the fortified line around the entirety of Paris. And that's pretty awesome to have. Of course, people might just simply surround Paris, but nonetheless, that's a risk you have to take. Now, the other one that you had about Lend-Lease to Republican Spain, it would simply, I believe, connect from this railway. It'd probably show up right here, unless you decide to send it by sea, and then you choose your destination port, and at that point you could say here, 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 or here if you want to, or if the Republicans have captured Andalusia. Basically, you can choose a destination port, and there's nothing anybody could do to stop you. That's worth noting. All right, what else was up there? The June 18th thing, that was something that de Gaulle called on June 18th. It was an appeal to the French people to join, and a lot of people did. I believe it was 100 ships worldwide did, but the bulk of the French warships didn't. They stayed with the Vichy, and that caused the Mars el Kabar, I believe that was here, where the British bombed the rest of the French fleet. So the idea there is to grab more land zones and more income-producing territory. So that's a little bit of a tall order, because you oftentimes have one but not the other. And it takes a little bit to do, but as usually seen in most games, it's seen. What did we have next? Italian invasion. So unfortunately, the only people that can send Lend-Lease is to this port at this minor factory to Abyssinia. Now, it's possible the French player might spend, is it $4 to upgrade this? And now he could send them fighters. So that is entirely possible to do, and would make things pretty interesting then. Yeah, if that's something the French player wants to do, that is something they could do. Oops. All right, Oath of Kufra. So at one point, Kufra used to be this territory right here. And at one point, some French dudes, I think it was only like 100 and some. It wasn't very many, maybe 1,000 French dudes, won a battle at Kufra, and they made an oath at that point saying, we're going to see the cathedral in Strasbourg, which I believe is here, somewhere there. Maybe, I don't know, I'm just guessing, but somewhere there. In Alsace-Lorraine. And they would see that back in Allied hands. And so that was the oath that they made. And so therefore, once Ilias-at-War has surrendered, representing that Kufra part, and France, or Free France, regains control of Alsace-Lorraine. So that is what that represents. Next up, we have Marine Nationale, the National Navy. Gain a prestige star if at the end of the game, France or Free France controls 2 capital ships of any type. I'm not crazy about this one. It's a filler, kind of that neutral middle ground where it's not too... because I want something to do with building things. It's not always about grabbing territory and building fortified lines and having more income or lend-leasing stuff. Some of it is I guess most of the French stuff is that, but you get the picture. So it's not combative, it's more building stuff, right? But this one, we can always switch it up if somebody comes up with a better idea. I'm happy to be receptive to your ideas. By the way, I read every single person's comments, regardless if it's on this stuff with campaign medals or not. I don't often have time to respond, but I have your stuff opened up every time I work on this stuff. You know, that's why I'm putting out these drafts. I read your stuff, and sometimes you'll tell me a bad idea. Not often, but bad ideas are actually fantastic because I have many bad ideas, and sometimes your bad idea gets in my head and joins up with my bad idea and actually forms a good idea. So I really like everything that people post up, you know, however stupid it is. I read it all, and I think, I'm not saying that anything is stupid by any means. Don't take this the wrong way. I think everything that people have said is very sound and logical and makes a lot of sense. And sometimes it just doesn't quite fit with the general theme I'm trying to present here, but I really do value it. And a lot of it, you'll see some recognizations of your own stuff, like Extend the Line comes from somebody. This one also comes from somebody as well. And this has been a few days since I worked on this, so I can't quite remember. But you get the picture. So if anybody has suggestions on the Marine Nationale and how to switch that one up, let me know. All right, moving on. Tier 3 stuff. Operation Dragoon. This is the old one I used to have in my previous version of this stuff. Operation Dragoon. Gain a prestige star if at any point during the game, Free France. These other ones say France or Free France, but this one is Free France. Captures southern France and forces Vichy France to surrender. And now it's obvious, because once you capture Paris, you would have France, and Vichy France wouldn't exist. I believe that's the way that goes. Yeah, so you capture southern France and force Vichy France to surrender. This is difficult to do. It is doable if you get a lot of lend-lease from America, but it would be slow doing, right? You have to capture southern France, which is, I guess it's not mountainous territory, but it's a coastal invasion. A coastal invasion. And the issue there is you're only going to be able to build up the France slowly each turn, bit by bit by bit. Of course, you could always attack them this way as well. That would also work just as good. But yeah, if America's feeding troops into France, then you could kind of see that Free France is getting built up, and Berlin could likewise send them these to Free France and, you know, anti-aircraft. The next turn, well, maybe I got to send them, you know, I don't know if you could send them a fortified line or a coastal artillery, but you get the idea. There's certain things that they can do to really make it more difficult. Next up, the Saar offensive. Gain a prestige star if at any point during a French turn, France or Free France controls German land zone Bavaria. Now, that one is right here. And the Saar offensive actually occurred at the start of World War II, where the French made a minor incursion and grabbed, I think, the town of Saar. It was very minimal. It was nothing too much to speak of. Now, the idea here is that Saar actually just grew from just a small little thing, and they called the whole thing like the Saar offensive. It wasn't, of course, it didn't just capture Saar, but the Saar offensive kicked off this major thing where he captured all of Bavaria. It's really hard to find certain naming things. But the idea here is you grab onto it and hold on to it, hold and control it at any point during a French turn. Now, that's unlikely to happen until you're looking at the end war stages. And then what happens then is the British will have Operation Plunder up here, where they grabbed hold of Western Germany because they want to end the game with it. And the French grabbed Bavaria to get their Tier 3 stuff. But the problem there is now, where do the Americans go, right? If you want the Americans to grab Bavaria, then the French won't be able to. and the Americans are already going to be busy with Western Germany, right? So you'll see this little tricky bit where the Americans are kind of like, okay, guys, you can't have everything. I'm going to take Bavaria, and sorry, France, you gotta go suck a lemon or something like that, right? You have to go tell them something else, and sometimes I'll have to just go. It's like, you don't deserve to take Bavaria. All right, the Little Entente. This one comes from, I believe it's Trig, which the Little Entente also encompasses my homeland in Bohemia, and I knew about it. I just didn't know how I should incorporate it. But here we go. At the end of the game, France or Free France or a member of its alliance or a neutral nation control all of the following land zones: all French home country land zones, and Bohemia, Slovakia, Yugoslavia, and Romania. Now, the Little Entente was, in World War I, the Entente Cordiale was the equivalent of the Allies. What we know of the Allies today, they call that the Entente Cordiale, where it even included the Italians, right? So it was the Russians, the Tsarist Russia, Italy, Britain, and France. That was the Entente Cordiale. And before World War II, the French started to work they thought they might be able to win the war by building a diplomatic structure themselves. And they were working hard at it. They actually built a lot of prestigious things, like fancy boats that would get them prestige. And they tried to build like fancy tanks and fancy boats and a lot of like flagship stuff that was new and innovative, but just wasn't practical in the battlefield. And one of the things that they put money into, or emphasis into, and resources into, is making this little Entente Cordiale, where they had Czechoslovakia, Romania, and Yugoslavia, because they were kind of worried about an aggressive Hungary, to be honest. Because Hungary was doing some interesting things then too. But yeah, so that's the scoop. They formed this Entente Cordiale, but they quickly backstabbed the Czechs, unfortunately, in Munich, and well, maybe not specifically there, but it wasn't good. It wasn't good at all. I feel sorry for my home country back in the day. They actually had really good stuff. They had a minor fortified line of their own that was built in 39, and that's why it would have been built in 39, and Hitler wanted to grab it beforehand, before they had it all fully built. And they had good tanks and everything like that too. Anyways, the Little Entente. So at the end of the game, these belong in Allied hands, or neutral hands at the very least. Just as so that France is not completely giving up on these guys, right? So what does that mean in the game? Well, it means the Russians can't grab as much as they would like to for this tier 3. They would likely want to grab Romania, Slovakia, Bohemia. That's their historical extent, basically, right? Berlin, Eastern Germany. So you're taking stuff that was historically theirs, and that's why it's a tier 3. Doing that. All right, moving on to tier 4s. La Forteresse de France. France has not surrendered during the entire game. Fulfills the following criteria. A French home country land zone has been attacked by at least 5 land units. I should say attacked in a single attack by at least 5 land units. France controls all its home country at the end of the game. Okay, so that's the way that is. Just to show that, it's not just simply, because the risk there is, I've had a game, Tanks on the Tundra, where I played Axis, Germany, or Axis in general, and I completely ignored France and went all out to Russia and captured Russia with my lightning strike within one turn. So 1939, Moscow was in the hands of the Axis. And at that point, the poor Russians had nothing else to do, really, at the end of the game. Surprisingly, the French and the British and the USA were too strong that I was never competent enough to actually grab French territory. They were just too damn strong for me. So it is quite a well-balanced game in that regards, right? Like if Germany decides to go east, then France will survive just because they are definitely strong enough. And so I did make an attempt to grab Belgium, thinking I could try to bypass and do Schlieffen against Paris, but nope, they pushed me back almost immediately. And in fact, they grabbed northern Italy, and I think for a turn they grabbed Austria, if not Bavaria. No, it was Austria. They grabbed Austria before I pushed them off. But they held on to northern Italy. Rome stayed in Axis hands at the end of the game, but northern Italy stayed at the end of the game. Northern Italy was in British hands or French hands, and Austria was momentarily grabbed for one turn. So that was an interesting game. So France can be quite powerful. So I wanted to represent that. I didn't want them to get their tier 4 just by not losing any territory and not doing anything except doing a Sitzkrieg the whole war. I wanted them to at least be attacked by the Germans. So that was the idea there. One of their homeland territories be attacked by the Germans. That's the scoop. Okay, next up we have Liberty, Equality, and Fraternity. France, Free France, member of its alliance, or a neutral nation control all of the following territories, barring 3. All land zones of the French printed model with IPP value of the French printed roundel. All land zones with the Spanish or Nationalist Republican printed roundel in the European region. Corsica, Mauritania, French Somaliland, and Abyssinia. Belgium, Netherlands, Bavaria, Switzerland, Bohemia, Slovakia, Yugoslavia, and Romania. This is to represent, well, the brotherhood, essentially, the fraternity, the brotherhood of Europe, you know, for liberty, fraternity, and equality in Europe. Part of it, too, stems from the whole little entente here as well. It's a stepping stone to this one. And I see this is wrong. A little stepping stone into this tier 4. Apart from that, we also have Corsica, Mauritania, French Somaliland, Abyssinia. You see that those are worth no IPP, but they're still included here. And I'll show you why momentarily. And then you have all the neighboring regions to France as well. So Bavaria, Belgium, Netherlands, that one's not neighboring, but Switzerland is. All of Spain is, because it's a Romance country as well. It should be all in either French or friendly hands at the very least. I don't think Northern Italy made it on there. No, Northern Italy is not on there, which is okay by me. It is okay by me. Okay, lastly, we have Corsica. We have Mauritania here. We have Abyssinia. There's one other one. We have French Somaliland, just because why not? French Somaliland seems to be an important hub of some kind right now too. Everything else is worth an IPP. So Madagascar, Cameroon, that's worth an IPP. All of North Africa here is worth an IPP, or at least the things worth anything. Syria is, and over here as well. So we don't need to worry about that. You get the scoop. So that is liberty, fraternity, and equality. Now the exception, of course, is 3. And likely those 3 might be these 3 territories here, Bohemia, Slovakia, and Romania, just because they're so close to the Russians that a person would just be concerned about them anyways. And that's one way of winning the game. And that, of course, means that you likely be able to, well, yeah, it means it's not horribly difficult to do, but it is a little bit more difficult to do. It's something similar to the previous one with the Fortress France, except France is not conquered. Instead, France has to make sure it captures a little bit outside, or has a little bit outside of its own domain, specifically Yugoslavia, and these ones, as well as the whole Spanish peninsula, in either French hands or friendly hands. And that takes care of the French. So let me know your thoughts and feedback on it, and what would you like to see a little bit differently. I see a few little odds and end changes. I usually tend to forget these before I get to the end of it. So I'll quickly review it and then go after it off camera. Thank you all, everybody, and thank you for your feedback. Talk to you later. Cheers.